This podcast is part of the Podcast Arcade Network.
Welcome to the Covert Nerd Podcast. Thank you for being here. It means a lot to me that you take the time out of your day to hear what I have to say. As you heard at the beginning of the episode, I am part of the Podcast Arcade. I'll include a link in the show notes so you can check out some of the other great podcasts in the Podcast Arcade. Also want to mention our sponsor, Rainbow Comics and Cards. I'll include a link in the show notes for them as well. And without further ado, let's dive right in and nerd it up with Tim. We've got Tim from Rainbow Comics here. He's been on previous episodes, and I'll put a link in the show notes for the episodes he's been on. He's a walking comic book encyclopedia practically. And we're going to talk about Hellboy, which is a topic I think when I first stopped in, Tim, and talked about doing an episode, that was one that you said, if you want to talk Hellboy, I'm ready.
Yeah, I have a couple episodes worth of Hellboy in me. I won't do that to you guys.
Try to rein it in.
No, I'll do my best.
But yeah, let's start right in. I guess, when did you first read Hellboy?
I first read Hellboy when I was first really getting into non-superhero comics when I was in the military, and it was around the first time, I want to say it was around the time the first Guillermo del Toro movie came out.
It was 2004, I believe.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm old. Well, and that's very interesting too, because Hellboy first came out in 1994.
Yes.
And so thinking of, like, it's just 10 years, and that was an accomplishment. And now here we are in 2020 having a relevant conversation about Hellboy. That was super
a lot
cool
of
to me.
Back issues to get in, because he's 94 to 2004.
Well, when the movie came out, they had reprinted all of the trades in the traditional red format that you've seen on Hellboy trades. It had
the
like
red banner at the top.
The red banner across the top.
White
and
Hellboy.
Yeah, and there was like a bunch of stickers. It was like Hellboy now in theaters or something like that. But I had picked up the first volume of that, and I was like, well, I'll check it out. And it didn't resonate with me at all. I didn't like it. I didn't like the art. And at the time too, I was at like a point where I was defining, like, I'm not going to go off on a tangent about belief systems or whatever, but I was kind of going on my own kind of personal spiritual journey, and I didn't like the idea of taking a demon and putting it in a spotlight, and I had a real issue with a boy from hell, and it just kind of bothered me. And also I was a child and I wasn't able to discern. I was an adult, but you know what I mean.
Young adult.
I was still trying to define what my moral compass is in relationship to the entertainment that I took in. And just at the time, Hellboy was not right for me.
Just to clarify, you saw the movie and then you picked up the comic books? Okay.
Yep. Actually, I think I bought the comic in anticipation of seeing the movie.
Okay.
But it was because the movie was coming out that I was going to go see it.
You saw it out. So you weren't really impressed that much at first.
It didn't land with me. It wasn't, at the time I was into more of a clean art style, and Mike Mignola's art is arguably anything but like clean lines. And that was just my preference at the time. Like, I was really into the Jeff Johns Teen Titans, which had a much more traditional line work. And again, this was at a time where I'm venturing out of superheroes for the first time. And it was kind of interesting. So Hellboy has been a thing that I was aware of, but I had always associated the comics as being not nearly as good as the movies. And it doesn't help that Guillermo del Toro is one of my favorite directors of all time. But let's fast forward a little bit. I picked up BPRD Plague of Frogs, and that is basically like a 4-volume omnibus set. Like, it was the the Hellboy at one point breaks off from the BPRD. The BPRD becomes its own thing.
And BPRD, just to interrupt, is Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense.
Yes.
Just for those of you that may not know.
Yeah, and I'll get into it, I promise.
Okay, all right.
But I read BPRD Plague of Frogs Volume 1 because it didn't have Hellboy. Specifically, I was like, well, wasn't interested in Hellboy, but I was kind of interested in Abe Sapien, the fish guy. I was kind of interested in Liz, who's the fire starter, and I was kind of intrigued, what does that mean when Hellboy's not around? What is that book? And that I fell in love with Hellboy, the Hellboy world through BPRD. BPRD was written for me. And there was a time right towards the tail end of Plague of Frogs where I hadn't read any Hellboy comics, like not Hellboy specifically, but I had been eating up BPRD so much, and at that point too, the Hellboy trades, and this is still true to an extent, are in and out of print so sporadically that it's difficult to get everything. So BPRD is something I was pretty familiar with. Going into last year, 2019, was it 2018? Man, I'm so old. Time is all compressed.
Flies.
So when the new movie came out,
2019.
2019, yeah. So last year, so leading into last year, so the tail end of 2018, Dark Horse started releasing the Hellboy Omnibus editions. And what those are, 4 softcover books that encompass Hellboy from his first issue in the Seed of Destruction all the way through the Hellboy in Hell macro series. And then they also released a couple short story collections and a few other things here and there. And they also released BPRD, The Devil You Know, which canonically ends the story that began in 1994. So it was a very big year for Hellboy in 2019, and it was the first time that for a fan like me I was able to actually sit down and read it, and with the context of being a discerning adult, you know, in my mid to late 30s versus you know, more or less an intellectual young adult in my early to mid 20s. Approaching the material was completely different, and it was very, 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 very interesting. I still maintain, for me personally, BPRD is the superior book, but it is the Hellboy universe, and Hellboy is the crux of it, and so I do identify myself as a Hellboy fan.
So you went from 2004, but basically didn't get into Hellboy until 2018. Hellboy himself, the storyline.
Hellboy proper, yeah.
What about BPRD, though, captured your attention that maybe the Hellboy that you picked up in 2004 that didn't?
So I've thought about this a lot, and my elevator pitch for the BPRD is for people who come into the store and are like, oh, why should I read this book? BPRD for me is the X-Files if they were investigated by monsters. It's really fun. It's just bizarre cases, and instead of having, you know, Mulder and Scully, who are, you know, very human characters, one's a rational skeptic and the other isn't, instead this time we have there's a were-jaguar, there's a fish guy, there's a fire starter, there's a homunculus, as well as a few other regular, like, everyday soldiers thrown into the mix as well. And it's very relatable versus, for me, Hellboy, the thing that separates me from Hellboy is I'm not a demon from hell, regardless of what my mother will tell you. And I wasn't around for World War II. I didn't fight Nazis. I don't have that worldview, but what I do have is a knowledge, for me specifically. I know this isn't going to be true for everybody, but I know what it's like to live on a military base. I know what it's like to have that structure. There was a point of view I had from that, and the inner struggles of like how everybody in the unit relies on each other, but also sometimes you just can't stand each other. And also there's work to do. Not to mention the drama in the book is fantastic. Unlike most comics, like if you go pick up a Marvel comic, right? If you go in and pick up the newest issue of Captain America, the conceit with Captain America is that time kind of flows. So every time you read Captain America, he was thought out, I want to say about 10 to 15 years ago. regardless. So it doesn't matter if you read Captain America in the 60s, he was thought out, he was thought out in the 60s there, but because it was, he was in the ice for 20 years. But as the decades go on, instead of being in the ice for 20 years, he was in the ice for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, whatever. And we don't directly talk about how Captain America was thought out in the 60s because he wasn't anymore. Yeah. In Hellboy, and when I say in Hellboy, the Hellboy universe, to include BPRD, to include Crimson Lotus, all that stuff, dates are set, and they're generally set the year that the book comes out. So Seed of Destruction #1 came out, it was 1994, and so that event actually introduced us to the concept of these frog monsters, and it was supposed to be just a one-time thing. In the year 2000, I want to say 2000, 2001, the first issue of BPRD came out. And so from there, that's what started what's now called the Plague of Frogs storyline, and that brought back the frog people who were introduced in 1994. In 1994, we have Hellboy, Liz, and Abe. In 2000, those characters have aged. And so we go into 2020 now. Well, I guess if we look at 2019, I believe was the tail end of The Devil You Know from BPRD, was wrapping up everything. But Liz in that is a middle-aged woman. She's not a young kid anymore. Like she's a bit more mature. She's a bit older, and the artwork represents that, and the way she's experienced her life has represented that as well. And so one of the things that I think is really cool, and I forgot where my point was, but one of the things I like about the Hellboy universe is that
it was the elevator pitch for the
the elevator stopped a long time ago. But there's a very real sense of time, and there's a word I'm looking for. The stakes are real. There's a very real sense that time is a factor, life is precious, and things have to be accomplished or the world's going to end. Yes. Fun fact, the world ends in the BPRD. Yes. There are 3 main arcs in the BPRD, and that is Plague of Frogs, which is the pre-apocalypse. There's Hell on Earth, which is the apocalypse, and there's The Devil You Know, who's Hellboy. There's The Devil You Know, which is the post-apocalypse. And a traditional sci-fi, you'll see the post-apocalypse, or you'll see the world right before it collapses. In this, if you've been reading since 1994, Hellboy is kind of a fun book to read. When he goes off on his own, it becomes a very singularly focused thing where we understand Hellboy as a character, and that's great. BPRD, Plague of Frogs, starts off as a very light, it's not like there's no stakes, but it's a fun book to read. And as you get into the end of Plague of Frogs going into Hell on Earth, it's a fantastic book. The quality of the book goes up. It no longer, though, is fun. And not that it isn't great, but there is the sense of whimsy is taken away because of what's happening. You watch this world that you've kind of fallen in love with collapse. And there are ramifications. There are horrible things that happen. Like volcanoes will suddenly just spring from the ground, and Houston's off the map. Yeah, it's completely gone.
It's just it's radical.
It's so good, and it gets to the point where you're like, you flip a couple pages and you're like, wait, what just happened? And you have to go back and reread it.
Because if that was not to knock on Marvel or DC,
no,
but
fine.
If that were to happen in one of those universes, somehow it would be put back.
I have an analog for that. In World War Hulk, because they did Planet Hulk, which was loosely what they based Thor Ragnarok on. When Hulk came back, he was pissed.
Yes.
And he tried
a good run.
Yeah, it was really good. In the first issue of World War Hulk, he tears down Avengers Tower.
Oh, okay.
Which was
about that.
Yeah, no, he did. And it only happened in World War Hulk. It never happened anywhere else. There was no within the story, it was great and there were stakes, but it had no ramifications outside of that specific book, which would have been really kind of cool to see the Avengers deal with that. And it would have made the book feel more quote unquote important. Whereas like now DC is, and we were talking about Marvel, and just as an analog.
Okay.
Over in DC, what they're doing right now is, they're wrapping it up, but they're doing the Year of the Villain. And in that, Lex Luthor is powering up all the villains, and he's shining the visage of doom in the sky, and you're seeing that across all of the books. And so we are seeing more of a change, I think, in response to books like Hellboy or Black Hammer, where because there is a firm timeline and things are happening, characters have to react to the things that are happening, even if they don't have full context for what's happening.
So that's what you like about Hellboy, BPRD in general, is
I think
the
Hellboy,
stakes, like you said, Houston's gone.
yeah, Houston's gone. What are you going to do? Hellboy died. What are we going to do? And that's another thing. Stop me, please, if I'm going off the rails. In the world of Hellboy, BPRD, what have you, death is final unless it isn't. And what I mean by that is when, okay, let's speculate for just a second. I'm going to spoil recent events in Batman.
That's okay. I'll put a spoiler at the beginning.
Alfred was killed by Bane in Batman a couple months ago. Alfred dying is a huge deal. It's a very good story. I'd be really hard-pressed to say in 5 years we're not going to have comics with Alfred in them. I think we'll see Alfred come back. In the Hellboy world, if there was a character analogous to Alfred, if he died, he'd be dead. There's only been 3 characters I can think of who haven't stayed dead. One of them is a homunculus, which is a hard word to say out loud. I can read it forever. Homunculus named Roger, whose livability is questionable at best. The other 2, and I could be wrong as well. Like I'm not concrete giving you information, but this is based off the best of my recollection. The other 2 characters would be Rasputin, who is the main villain, and Hellboy himself. And when Hellboy is brought back, it's not his choice. There was a thing that I want to say Scott Alley, who was an editor and a writer on BPRD, said is if he said death is final and things will break, and if things are repaired, they will still remain broken. So if you break a glass table, you can put that glass table back together, but there's still going to be cracks. It's not going to be as strong as it was. And that's kind of a tenet in BPRD. If we're going to break it, we can put it back together, but it's not going to be the same. As a storyteller and a fan of character, the way Hellboy and its related books handle stakes is it's so unlike anything else you're going to find in modern pop culture.
And Mike loves the supernatural world, because I hadn't read Hellboy before, but I read Joe Golem.
Oh, sure.
Which is one of Mike's works. And it has a very supernatural tinge or taste to it, for lack of a better word. But he really loves that supernatural world. When I was reading up about how he came up with Hellboy and the supernatural in general, he started reading Bram Stoker's Dracula and just got sucked into all the supernatural world and myths that go along with that.
You can even see that in Gotham by Gaslight.
Yeah. I think that's where he got a lot of this inspiration, because like you said, BPRD is just kind of a supernatural monster story arc on each, and how he tries to solve this mystery, so to speak. But I really like those, like you said, the BPRD, because they're short in general. At least the ones I read are fairly short.
Sure.
They're kind of whimsical because they take place in the past.
Sure. Well, and it's interesting because Mike Mignola has trusted so many people with his world. Jeff Johns has written for BPRD. We've got Chris Robertson does a lot of stuff. Scott Alley, Gabriel Ba and Fabio Moon, who are twins. They've done some work on a book called BPRD Vampire. It's just phenomenal. It's so good. Abe Sapien had his own series for a while, and there were another set of twins that were working on the art in that, and their names escape me offhand, but pitch perfect. They're wonderful. Those twins are now working on Lucifer for DC, like the Black Label Sandman books, but it's just so good. There's a horror comic called Harrow County that's written by Cullen Bunn. The art in that is done by Tyler Crook. And there was a tiny little bit of animosity because Tyler Crook was the second main artist on BPRD. And when he went over to do Harrow County, he kind of left the crew in a bit of a bind. And everybody was a little upset, but also he's doing the work of his career on Harrow County. And that's how we got Lawrence Campbell as the main artist on BPRD. And throughout the run of, like, Hellboy traditionally, the art in that is either Mike Mignola or Mike Mignola-esque.
Yes.
There's a very clear...
It's still pretty, like you said, it's still pretty rough, so to speak, but I think it fits in his universe.
Yeah, it absolutely does. If we're not getting Mike Mignola, we're getting somebody like Duncan Fagredo, who has a very Mignola style. Over in BPRD, what we got was a completely different visual take. And we had Guy Davis was the main artist for Plague of Frogs. Hell on Earth, we saw Tyler Crook. And then going into The Devil You Know, we had Lawrence Campbell. And they brought a very interesting, like, real world visual take on what Mike Mignola drew as more of an esoteric, stylized monster world. And just, like, injected it with, like, this fierce ground level realistic take. And it's so to see how, like, Duncan Fagredo draws Abe Sapien versus how Mike Mignola draws Abe Sapien versus how Tyler Crook draws Abe Sapien versus it should not, narratively speaking, work. It shouldn't do it. Michael Oeming did a whole issue of that, where we have painted issues that are done by just masters of their art, and it's so wonderful. And just the fact that you can have these visual styles who divorced from the words, divorced from the writing, you would never know that just because this character looks a little more chibi and this character looks a little more realistic, there's no what if in the Hellboy universe. Whenever you read a story, as far as the comics, the short stories are a little bit different. There's prose and all that. But if we're talking about the comics, there's not like a what if Abe Sapien was fighting in World War II? Like, there's none of that. Everything you read actually happens to those characters in the world of Hellboy. And having such unique creative voices all working in tandem to tell this one epic, it should not by any right work. And if it does work, it should not work nearly as well as this does. And it is so much fun.
It does. It's just a fun book. Speaking of, you talked about Abe Sapien. What is your favorite character from Hellboy, do you think? Is it Abe Sapien or is it...
I have a cop-out answer.
Okay, you can give the cop-out answer and then maybe...
My cop-out answer is every major comic book company, I believe, has a trinity of some kind. Okay. So DC has Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman. Marvel's got Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man. You could argue that Image has like Spawn and Witchblade and, I don't know, someone else that I can't think of offhand. For Hellboy, it's definitely, you've got an expansive universe of characters, but it comes down to Abe, Liz, and Hellboy. And if I get one of those three, I'm going to have a good time. And for completely different reasons. They're so three very different characters. In the Guillermo del Toro movies, they had a romance between Liz and Hellboy. It does not exist in the comics. That's not a thing. If anything, Liz and Abe kind of have an unspoken thing that nobody ever acts on, and that's kind of cool because you've got fire and water, and that's like a neat thematic thing.
I like that. Yeah,
yeah, it's really fun. But if you were like, gun to my head, make me pick a character, man, it's gonna be a tie between Captain Daimyo from BPRD, who is in the newest Hellboy movie. He's the were jaguar. I love him. Or Johann Kraus, who's an ectoplasmic ghost in a sealed suit. And I can't choose between those two. A close honorable mention would be Roger, but I can live without Roger. It's fine. But no, I love, and that goes to like the military guy in me. I love Daimyo is a traditional military guy, and he is just he's hired basically to militarize the BPRD and get them to work as a cohesive unit. And he just comes in and he's like, all right, look, I'm done. Like, I cannot handle whatever it is you guys are doing. I need you all to just cut your drama and let's do this. And he just has no time for any of the, he's not ignorant to the fact that he's working with monsters. He gets to the point where he's like, I don't care that you're monsters. We have work to do. And I absolutely love that. And then Johan, who was voiced by Seth MacFarlane in the second Hellboy movie, the Golden Army. Sequel. Mm-hmm. In the comics, he is so flawed that he's the most fun to read because you just like him. And he makes some really dumb, stupid mistakes, but they're mistakes that you could see yourself making, and you see and this is me speaking of myself when I say you, but like I see so much of myself in him that when he makes a mistake, I'm like, oh no, that is
speaking of real world consequences.
That is 100% what I would do, and we would all be in so much trouble. So I absolutely adore the dichotomy of those two, and they don't get along. But no, that's so yeah. It's a complete cop out. I answered it twice with no actual answer.
That's okay. I like the fact that, like you said, it is kind of whimsical. Hellboy's got would you say a dry sense of humor?
I would say wry. I think it's not so much dry. It's like he knows what he just did. Yeah,
very sarcastic. Actually,
he's just kind of he's perpetually 40. And he could you imagine being because I'm in my late 30s, man. If you just I would be unstoppable if I had energy. and I see Hellboy as just perpetually old enough to know better, young enough to not care, and he kind of can get away with it. And so he will punch a witch in the face and then comment on it in a way that I could only wish that I could.
I know.
And then he'll be cursed, and he's like, "Yeah, whatever. Here, take my eye."
Yeah, it doesn't matter. And he loves pancakes.
He does love pancakes.
He started eating his first pancake when he was 2.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, what a weird thing just to kind of throw in there.
In the Hellboy short stories collection, Volume 1, there's a bunch of stories where he's a kid. Okay. And also in like the BPRD 19, what was it? Hold on, now let me use my cheat.
Because he was a kid, refresh my memory, he was at the BPRD in the United States, or was it England?
Yes, both.
Oh, okay.
Because he came in 1944, and then there's a book called BPRD 1946, where you see Professor Broom putting together what becomes the BPRD, and you get to see Hellboy running around as like a little kid, and it is
he's got his big hand, it's like the size of his body.
Delightful. It's absolutely delightful. Oh man, the right fist of doom is so.
Let's dive into that a little bit on Hellboy's powers.
Sure.
I guess explain some of that.
Well, he's a demon. He is a demon. He was a demon who was birthed by a human woman in hell, who was conjured to Earth in World War II by the evil Russian wizard Rasputin. On his way to Earth, while being conjured, he was grabbed by the ghost of a priest and a nun who prevented him from going to the Nazis and was given to the Allies.
Yes. Score.
I did it. He's
not confusing at all.
No. And you're not given all of that at the beginning. Yeah. That's something that you come to learn as it goes.
Yeah, if we can let's nerd out about his powers. I know, he's got the fist of doom,
the right fist of doom.
Then he's got a healing factor. I think someone said on maybe Wolverine level, I guess.
No, I wouldn't say it's on Wolverine level. I would say maybe more of a Deadpool level, where he's gonna feel it, and he's going to be limping for a minute. So it's not like you stab him and then he's gonna heal it right up. Like, he's gonna bleed for a minute. But the right fist of doom is kind of the key to the apocalypse, and he just has it. It is his right hand, and it is. How do you explain it? It literally is like the key to the apocalypse. Without that hand, you can't usher in the end of the world. And Rasputin has been after that since World War II, if not before, but World War II is the closest he'd gotten to it. And basically, there's... Man, you'll have to forgive me. I'm going to misspeak because I don't have the logistics of it down. But when you see images of Hellboy where he's got full-on horns and a crown, that's the version of Hellboy called Anung Un Rama. And that is... I don't remember what that's supposed to mean. I want to say it is... Is it the Angel of Death?
Let me see. Oh, okay. The name translates roughly to, and upon his brow is set a crown of flames.
That's it. Okay. And basically that means that he is the king of the end of the world, which he doesn't want. No. It's the opposite of the hero's journey, where the hero is thrust into becoming the hero. In this, he's doing everything he can to not be the villain. And so when he was killed at the end of a book called The Storm and the Fury, he goes to hell, and he's like, oh, hey, I did it. I'm not going to bring around the end of the world. Hellboy in Hell is so very different from the rest of both Hellboy and BPRD. It feels very much like, kind of like Dante's Inferno, but comics. And it's very, very interesting. Do not read Hellboy in Hell if you haven't read Hellboy. It will not make sense.
Because what did his right fist of doom, does that give him extra powers when he punches somebody, or what extra does it give him?
It's a stone fist.
Okay. Because he's already naturally strong, super strong.
He's already a demon. It without the conduit to bring about the end of the world, it's just a stone fist. But he can articulate it. It's got articulate fingers. He uses it like a fist, but it doesn't have any feeling. So, if somebody swings a sword at him, he can hold up his hand, and you can't cut through it.
So he's got quick healing, super strength, I guess, so to speak. I don't think he has any type of mental...
No, he's just a brawler.
Yeah,
His favorite thing to do is get drunk and beat people up. For a long time,
beat up monsters.
Not even. There was a whole time in the comics pre-2005, I think, where we knew there was like a 3 or 4 year period where he was on a bender in Mexico, and we didn't have any information on it until around 2005-ish. There was a Hellboy in Mexico miniseries that came out. It was written by Mignola with art by Richard Corbin, who is a famous horror artist. And he told the story of what Hellboy did during his 3 or 4 year bender in Mexico. He became best friends with a luchador,
awesome.
Which was great. And some of that was brought into the newest Hellboy movie. Like, it kind of opens with some of the Hellboy in Mexico stuff. It's really, really fun. But again, it's one of those that doesn't work if you haven't read Hellboy. But all of that stuff is in Short Story Collection Volume 2. I believe it's in Volume 2, yeah.
We're throwing all these Volume 1s, Volume 2s. I guess if you're a listener and you have them in front of you, where would you say, look, I've never read Hellboy, I've never watched the movies. Where do you think a newbie can start?
You would want to get Hellboy Omnibus Volume 1, Seed of Destruction. Okay. And I know that sounds daunting, but they're paperback omnibus editions, and they run about $25 a piece, and it's really not that bad. Hellboy is great. BPRD is better. And that's just my...
You're saying do Hellboy first, then BPRD.
I would say...
If you're a newbie.
I would say you could do either.
Okay.
I say if you really are interested in a big red boy from hell with a big old hand, check out Hellboy. If you're more interested in monsters, hunting monsters, check out BPRD. If you don't think you're into either of those things and you just want something cool to read, give it a shot. It's not a horror book. It's not a book that's going to keep you up at night. It's not a book that like has an agenda to push. It's not trying to say anything. And I don't mean that as a diss. It's not like it's not a thinking man's book, but it's a book that emphasizes character development over pushing an agenda.
Yeah. I think that's what makes it so BPRD anyway, especially just fun, especially just the few that I've read, because I'm definitely not an expert, but just the hunt. They're hunting for these monsters, and it's usually 2, 3, 4 issues, and then you're done. It's on to the next.
It changes because you started with the first volume of BPRD, is that right?
I can't remember exactly which one it was, but
when they started BPRD as a book, they didn't know quite what they wanted from it. And so there were a bunch of different writers and a bunch of different artists telling stories about the BPRD. And as you get into kind of volumes 3 and 4, you'll start to see it all kind of cohere into a more relatable, understandable story. So it starts off as these disparate stories about these really cool characters, and then it kind of segues into a very tight-knit story that's so finely crafted that everybody else should be doing it in comics. They just should be.
It was BPRD 1956, BPRD Long Night at Goloski, and Saturn Returns 1, 2, and 3.
Okay,
and
sure,
Beast of Argue. Those are the 4 I've read.
So you read Hellboy and the BPRD?
Yes.
Okay. Which is a different book.
Okay.
Hellboy and the BPRD takes place in the 50s, and they do about 4 or 5 issues that take place like in 1954, 55, 56. I think 57 is done. I think we're in the middle of 58 with a new Hellboy story coming out tail end of February.
Okay. Those were all good. I liked them.
They're all great.
Good story, fun. Nothing, like you said, there's no social commentary or anything.
Well,
it's
and
just,
with those, if you want to just read a fun book that doesn't have ties to anything in the Hellboy world, the Hellboy and BPRD books are great because you could just go pick up Hellboy and the BPRD 1955. You could go pick up Hellboy and the BPRD 1957. You don't have to have read 1956, and you don't have to have prior knowledge of Hellboy to get into it. If you do have knowledge, you'll read about these things that happened that are referenced in books that were written earlier. When an event happens in a specific year in Hellboy, it is concrete. That's when that event happened. So like now when you're reading through the Hellboy short stories and you read Hellboy in Mexico, that's really cool. And then you read about it later. And, if you're reading everything in chronological order, you'll read about a story that was written actually way before Hellboy in Mexico, but it's referencing the events of Hellboy in Mexico. And you read it, you're like, oh, I know what that's talking about. But if you'd never read it, or if he talks about, oh, you remember in 1956 when we did blah, 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 then you read Hellboy in the BPRD 1956, and you're like, oh, that's the thing he offhandedly mentioned in one panel one time.
That's so cool.
It's very cool.
Basically, he's looking back at the last 20 plus years, and oh, hey, they mentioned this little in 3 panels. We talked about this. Let's make a whole story based on that. Do you think that was from Mike, or is that coming from somebody else? I wonder.
Nothing that happens in the Hellboy universe happens without Mike's say-so. Mike Mignola is credited on every issue of BPRD. He is not the writer. The writers for that were Scott Alley, and I want to say BPRD was written by Scott Alley and John Arcudi. John Arcudi did Plague of Frogs through Hell on Earth, and then about midway through Hell on Earth, Scott Alley took over writing duties, but Scott Alley had always been an editor. Mike Mignola is the Kevin Feige of Hellboy, where he has final say, final veto power. He has kind of the idea of where the story ought to be going. He's very active in a story concept, not directly editing, but like a group editor, sort of.
Sure. He's going to say, I don't like that. We're not going to go that direction.
It's his baby.
Yeah.
But he did, I believe he wrote darn near every issue of Hellboy.
So that's from 94 until...
Well, it gets a little fuzzy because Hellboy in Hell, while only being about 13, 14 issues, did not come out regularly. And reading it collected is kind of difficult because you don't have a sense of the time passing. Because like I said, when an issue of Hellboy comes out, it takes place in that year. So there could be 2 or 3 years between issues in Hellboy in Hell, and you just don't have concept for that. There are vastly more issues of BPRD than there are Hellboy.
Do you think we can pivot on that? I know talking to you, you mentioned you didn't know where they're going to go with Hellboy. What do you think they're going to do? What's Dark Horse's or Mike's plan going forward then, since you said Hellboy is dead?
Hellboy, well, I didn't say Hellboy's dead. I said the story was over.
Okay, sorry. Story was over.
Story's over. The story has reached its canonical end. So it's the story that began with Plague of Frogs, finished in BPRD, The Devil You Know. Hellboy comics aren't finished because there's a lot of story to tell still within the years. Like I said, we're up to 1958. Seed of Destruction started in 1994. So like we're good. Not to mention we've got miniseries from bit characters that are popping up all the time. The first Hellboy universe comic came out earlier this year that didn't have Mike Mignola's name on it, and it is Crimson Lotus. And usually anything that's from the world of Hellboy has Mike Mignola's name on the cover. This does not. This is a character that Scott Alley really enjoyed, and she's an assassin whose dad was killed by Rasputin before World War II. And as a gift, he killed this girl's dad right in front of her, and as a gift he gave her ribbons of her dad's skin that she now carries with her. And she's also like this weird underworld assassin during like the 50s and 60s. Wow. And it's really cool.
They went there.
They really did. Like there's no rules in Hellboy. It's so much fun. We haven't even touched on Sir Edward Grey Witchfinder.
Okay.
Witchfinder is a book that takes place in the 1800s. Canonical with Hellboy. The events in this matter. Edward Grey does not die. He ends up getting cursed to live in hell. And he's one of the reasons why Hellboy gets out of hell. And his stuff reads like a Victorian X-Files thing. This is by Mike Mignola, too. By Mike Mignola. It's set in the world of Hellboy. There was a new Witchfinder comic that just started this year in 2020. So it's still going, and that's set 100 years ago.
Okay. So Hellboy, the universe, the Hellboy is not going away anytime soon.
Just because the main canon story has reached its logical conclusion, doesn't mean we're not going to get more. Doesn't mean that we won't see a rebooted Hellboy. That's very plausible. It's something that's never been done because everything we've gotten has all been in one little thing, but reboots in comics happen all the time.
It sounds like Mike's got plenty of other places to go.
Oh, for sure.
For a long time.
For sure. And if if you're listening to this and you're like, I'm not into monsters, I don't care, but you're intrigued by the storytelling concept, I highly recommend checking out Jeff Lemire's Black Hammer from Dark Horse. I think Black Hammer, and I know I've mentioned it on this show before, Black Hammer is doing so much to subvert the idea of what superhero comics can be and what character drama is and what sci-fi and comics can be. And it's a love letter to everything that came before, while also, like I said, subverting expectations and being something completely new and revolutionary. And it's very exciting.
A year ago, there was some talk of people worried about Dark Horse, but with Jeff Lemire and Mike Mignola at Dark Horse, I don't think that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, well, it is.
It's kind of off topic, but
Dark Horse had Star Wars. Disney bought Star Wars, and that was kind of the big thing for Dark Horse. Dark Horse no longer has Conan. Marvel has Conan. What else do they have? Alien and Predator. Guess what? Marvel just bought Fox. What does that mean for the future of Alien and Predator for Dark Horse? These are valid concerns for Dark Horse as a publisher, but Dark Horse also doesn't only publish comics. They also publish art books. They publish game guides. They publish a whole bunch of stuff. Not to mention the fact that they're the House of Hellboy and the House of Black Hammer. I think you don't have to worry about Dark Horse until it gets to the point where Mike Mignola is like, nah, I'm going to take my ball and go home. Then we have a reason to really be concerned for the state of things at Dark Horse. But as of right now, I love, like, everybody over there, from the editors to the writers and the artists and the guy who works in the mail clerk and the guy who runs their social media, all of that stuff. Everybody at Dark Horse is so great. And we're very lucky to live in a world where Hellboy exists in any fashion, let alone comics, novels, animated movies, 2 different live action franchises. It's so insanely fun.
He pitched this to DC way back in the 90s, and DC turned it down. They were going to publish it under the Vertigo brand, but they didn't like it, so he went to Dark Horse. So I thought that was kind of interesting. That's really DC cool. Could have had Hellboy, but I think they've done some crossovers with Batman. And
there was a crossover with Batman and Starman. You guys, if you want to hear
Starman, you're one of your guys. Yeah.
If you guys want to hear me talk about Starman,
there's our next episode.
That's well, I don't know about the next episode. I have to reread Starman. I don't want to misspeak about Starman.
But it's kind of funny that they turned him down, but yet they did a crossover.
They definitely and that's business too.
Yeah, it is. I know.
Yeah, and they didn't cross over until 2000.
Yeah, it was a long time later.
Yeah, six years, so long. Yeah. How old am I?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what time is it? I should be going to bed.
Yeah,
I'm so old.
Time for your medicine.
Oh man, you don't even know how right you are. Oh,
yeah, Hellboy is just great. I think pick up. Like Tim said, pick up some BPRD or, like you said, the Omnibus, the Volume 1, whatever you prefer.
I'd say BPRD, Plague of Frogs, Volume 1, Hellboy, Seed of Destruction, or any of the Hellboy and the BPRD trades. And if you don't know, you can message me on Twitter. At MOTHEE is me on Twitter. You can go to, if you're on Facebook, if you go to Rainbow Comics Lincoln, shoot me a message on there. Tell me you heard me on Covert Nerd and you were curious about Hellboy books, or you can always just stop in. We're in 1501 Pine Lake Road, Suite 17 here in Lincoln, Nebraska, and come by, say hi. Taylor doesn't know anything about Hellboy, but she'll fake it.
Exactly. She'll point you in the right direction. You guys got a heck of a selection. Plus,
no, for sure.
Go online and get these two and check them out and let us know what you think about them and tell Tim he's wrong, I guess.
Yeah, no, definitely. Tell me I'm wrong. I dare you.
I dare you to tell me you don't love Hellboy. No, it's good. So, well, I appreciate it, Tim. We'll have to work on another subject, maybe Starman in the future.
Maybe
I don't know.
Starman, maybe. If there's something people want me to ramble about, I'm be more than happy to do whatever people want, man. I am a monkey here to dance for your pleasure.
No, you are a comic book resource. Rattling off those names, man, you're great.
I did have a cheat sheet.
Okay,
I did have a cheat sheet.
So, all right. Well, thanks, Tim. I appreciate it. And go to covertnerd.net, and I'll have the links for getting hold of Tim on Twitter and for Rainbow Comics in general. And let's talk and see what you liked about Hellboy or what you didn't like or what you want us to talk about. Whatever works.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks a lot. Oh, you can also catch us at Grand Con.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Grand Con's coming up here in Nebraska in, about 5 weeks. So stop by, say hi to Tim, and let him know what you thought, or tell him about Starman or whatever else you think he likes, and Transformers to... we got Star Wars.
Oh, Star
Clone
Wars,
Wars coming up.
Oh my gosh, we're gonna talk about Clone Wars.
You may not see Tim for about a week.
Oh man, it's gonna.
As of this recording that comes out in 2 weeks, it's February 20th. Is it 21st?
21st.
Oh, a week from today.
Yeah, it's a week from today.
Oh.
They just put out a teaser. It looks so good. It looks so good. It looks so good.
We'll have to talk about that.
We're gonna talk about it.
Awesome. Okay, thanks, Tim. It was a blast recording with Tim. And if you've listened to other episodes, and I encourage you to do that, I'll include a link in the show notes. You can hear some of the other great content Tim and I have talked about. He's such a great guy. Also, go to covertnerd. And remember, go to covertnerd.net for for the links for the previous episodes and the ways that you can reach out to me via social media or email. Until next time, nerd it up.